Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris during their first debate. Before we get started with this analysis, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, the goal of this is not to be persuasive regarding one candidate or the other. I don't really care who you vote for, and the goal of this is to be politically neutral. Last thing before we get started is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Now, you're already noticing that she's looking at the camera. So basically, her strategy is to try to talk directly to people at home. Now, that's going to contrast with how Donald Trump does it. I'm going to get into that in just a minute.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing.
And you may already notice that she's talking a lot with her hands. Now, what research shows is that people that talk with their hands tend to be believed more. So doing this during something like a debate is an attempt to be persuasive. It's an attempt to be open. She's not blocking off the middle of her body, and she's talking with her hands. That means that she's being very visible. So the goal in that is to become more persuasive. Donald Trump oftentimes does this, but this debate's a little bit different. We'll get into that.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Now, you're already noticing that he is looking at the moderator rather than looking at the audience. Now, this is an interesting strategy, but it's also very typical of the way that Donald Trump is that he tries to interact and be persuasive with the person sitting in front of him. So he sees this as him talking to the moderators, whereas Kamala Harris seems to be talking to the audience. Obviously, they both know that the goal is to be persuasive to everybody listening, but the way that they try to interact is very, very different, the way that they try to connect.
75 years pay us back for all that we've done for the world, and the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China.
So you can see her touching her cheek, stroking her hair. That's something we oftentimes do as a way to help manage our emotions. It helps us feel calmer. So when you see things like that, you should pay attention to what the opponent is saying, because that might be something that bothers the one who's reacting.
China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't.
All right. Now watch Harris right here. As he continues to talk about this, you're going to see her eyes squinting. We oftentimes squint our eyes when we hear things that we don't like. So as he's talking about this, you're going to see her squinting repeatedly.
As you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it.
So as you can see, she's squinting, her blink rate's picking up. There's probably some degree of stress going on right now as she's formulating a response.
We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a.
So you can also see right now that Kamala Harris is smiling. Now, she oftentimes does this as a way to mask what she's feeling. And it's not just her. Politicians across the board generally do this as a way to mask how they're feeling. So when they start feeling frustrated or when they get annoyed, they smile instead, because that makes it so you can't really read how they're actually feeling.
A few years ago, this has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States.
So you'll notice after Donald Trump said that, which I presume that Harris interprets as something that might alienate some people, that gave her more confidence. You see her chin go up. You see her exposing her neck more. We oftentimes do this when we're feeling more comfortable, when we don't feel threatened, because this is a very vulnerable part of our body. So as you can see, her position changed once he started talking about race and once he started talking about subjects that were not specific to the economy. So as he navigated away from the economy, as he starts talking about more things like this, it seems to give her confidence.
States, you look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest.
You see, even though she has a slight smile, it's a lot more subtle than the one we saw a minute ago because she feels a lot less threatened by what he's saying now. Like I said, I imagine that she sees this as potentially alienating people, so she probably doesn't mind him talking about these kinds of things because she's going to have plenty to say about it.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
So as you can see, she's putting her hands out with her palms up. Now, oftentimes this is associated with somebody trying to say, what I'm about to tell you is the truth. So that doesn't necessarily mean it always is, but that's the attempt. So as you see this with her hands up like this is a way of her saying, what I'm about to tell you is really, really important.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst
All right. So watch Donald Trump's reaction to this.
Employment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst.
So closes his eyes, purses his lips. As I talked about before, when Kamala Harris was squinting her eyes because she was hearing things she didn't like, this is also something Donald Trump does not like what she's saying right now. Not only does he squint his eyes, he closes his eyes entirely because it seems to probably bother him to hear this from her.
Country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks.
So you're noticing right now Donald Trump starting to talk with his hands. When he gets in his flow and he really gets into what he wants people to hear, you're going to see him speaking very emphatically with his hands like this. This is very typical for him.
We did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit.
So once again, when he feels like he's got a point that's going to land with people, he's really going to get emphatic with it. He's really going to use his hands a lot. And this the way he's doing it right now is very typical of the way that he talks.
But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
Part of the reason I focus on hands is because hands draw attention to us. And so when people lie, they tend to try to not bring too much attention to themselves because they don't want people to pay that much attention to what they're saying. So the more emphasis you see with their hands tonight, typically is things that they really want you to listen to.
Would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would...
Now, if you'll watch this right here, watch Trump's body language when she starts talking about the Wharton School.
Worst, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his...
So you can see, she starts talking about the Wharton School. He scoots his body back. We do that to gain emotional distance. When we get frustrated by something or when we want to get away from somebody, we do tend to move back subtly. Even though they're actually next to each other and not facing each other, it doesn't change the fact that body language-wise, that's what we tend to do. We tend to back up.
Good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just...
So watch Kamala Harris's reaction to this.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4...
So after he said that, you saw that her chin goes down. That's a defensive maneuver.
Sentences like run, spot, run. 4 sentences.
Then he said the thing about run, spot, run, and her chin goes up. Now, we oftentimes turn our nose up to people when we think we're better than them or when we think that something that they say is stupid or something like that. So clearly when he said that, that made her feel more confident because she thought it was ridiculous.
The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90%.
Now, this look from Harris right here. You can see that her lip is pulled up on one side. Now, all emotions are on both sides of the face, all real emotions. If you fake an emotion, it might not be on both sides of the face, it might just be on one. So right now, what this looks like is contempt. When we tend to put one corner of our mouth up, that is a contemptuous look. So as he's talking about this, as he's talking about inflation, it could be that she's trying to feign a smile and it's not a real one, or it could be that she's experiencing contempt right now.
The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars.
All right, there was a lot right there. Watch this right here.
Deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America.
So he shook his head no.
He invited.
Raised his eyebrows because he wants to make sure you're looking at his face. That's what we do. We raise our eyebrows to bring attention to ourselves. So he's saying no. He wants you to pay attention to that.
Trade wars.
And then there's contempt right there on the corner of his mouth. Watch this all again. It's a very interesting sequence.
Of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be.
So watch his chin position right here.
To China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out.
So as soon as she said sold us out, chin moves down. He goes into a defensive position. He didn't like hearing that.
Philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat.
So as soon as he said she's gone to my philosophy now you saw her literally scoot back. Once again, that's a way to gain distance, to show somebody you disapprove, to show somebody you want to disconnect as they're saying something or that you disagree with it.
Ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But
so obviously she's not going to agree with something like that, but the involuntary aspect of it, she couldn't help but move her body backward because she had such a visceral response to it.
if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
So watch her face right here when he says she's a Marxist.
It will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody.
Now I talk about bringing attention to our face when we raise our eyebrows. There is another situation where we do that, and that's shock. I think she's actually quite surprised he said that, and she also looks amused that he said that. So she seems to be having a very genuine reaction right here when he referred to her as a Marxist. So she seems to be shocked. She seems to be amused.
Change it, and it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals, and that's bad for our economy too. You know, you mentioned before. We'll talk.
All right, now let's pay some attention to what Donald Trump is doing right here.
State pouring in, and just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And
all right, now you see him pointing like this. I know it's a little bit obscured, but as he's talking about this, as he is pointing to the moderator, once again, she talks to the camera. So she's trying to talk to the people at home. Donald Trump builds relationships differently. So he's talking to the person who's literally talking to him. And as he's pointing to him, as he's pointing like that, that's an aggressive gesture. Not that he's mad at the moderator, but he is making a point that is aggressive, one where he feels irritated as he's talking about it. So he can't help but show that type of body language.
And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy.
Now we're going to watch a minute of Kamala Harris responding to Trump about abortion bans.
Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended.
So one thing you're noticing right there, so you notice that swallow. As she's talking about this, that probably means that her mouth is drying up somewhat. I think that this part right here is one where you're getting a very genuine reaction. Because oftentimes with politicians, they have these practiced reactions. They have little speeches that they give. They have certain things or sound bites that they want to say. In a lot of ways, what she's saying right here, even if it is prepared, there seems to be a lot of genuine emotion behind it. We're going to go through that as we watch this.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans.
All right, so you see the eyebrows go up there, Trump abortion bans. She wants people to hear that. To her, that's very important for people to hear.
Which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health.
And now she's leaving her eyebrows up. So she's saying it's criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide these services. So she really wants people to hear this. Leaving her eyebrows up means I want you to listen to everything I'm saying right now.
Care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman
So you saw the anger in her eyes right there.
to
Watch this right
agree.
here.
The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should.
That is a real reaction of anger. As she's talking about this, I do genuinely believe she is actually getting quite mad. Let's watch Donald Trump's reaction to some of what I was just pointing out with Harris.
Or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with.
So that is a stereotypical look of contempt right there on Trump's face. So her saying that Donald Trump should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. He didn't like that.
Women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted?
And then there was a strong swallow afterward. So he's doing a pretty good job of sitting still, but it's clear that there's a lot of emotions bubbling up for him as well during this.
Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency.
One thing you're not seeing from him is him saying that's not true or shaking his head no, which he oftentimes does when he feels very strongly about something or when what the other person says is factually incorrect. He seems to have a hard time not showing that. But right now, you're not seeing anything like that.
Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the
Now, he's been sitting very still this whole time. And as soon as she starts talking about Project 2025, you're seeing him move around some. So I think we're seeing some more irritated or anxious energy build up as she's talking about this in Donald Trump.
A monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people.
So you see this hand sign right here. So she's not pointing, but she's sort of got a knuckle out. This is something politicians practice because pointing sometimes can make us feel like somebody's being aggressive towards us, and people don't like that. So they do retrain themselves in a sense to not point at people or to talk with an open hand.
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the
So he said, and probably after birth. Watch this right here.
month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth.
So earlier, one of the moderators had said, you can't get an abortion after a baby's born anywhere in the United States. And now he's sort of disagreeing with that. He's pointing at her. He's calling her out. So there is an aggressiveness about this.
Birth. Just look at the
And now he is using both hands. So the idea that Roe v. Wade wasn't a good thing is something that he seems to feel very strongly about and something that he feels very open about and wants people to hear more about. So he is being very emphatic in a very genuine way about this.
former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President.
A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
So one thing that can be very difficult with politicians, particularly in situations like this, is telling whether or not they're being deceptive or whether or not they are lying intentionally. Now, this is something that's fairly recent. So this wouldn't be something that he's had a lot of time to practice saying over and over again, and so that the emotion sort of goes out of it. As he's talking about this right now, the type of emphasis that he has, his body language suggests that he actually believes what he's saying. I think that he actually believes exactly what he's saying right now. Let's go back and hear this again.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
He can probably hear Harris laughing, and you can see his body recoil a little bit, and now he's emphasizing more because he thinks this is a good point that people need to hear. He seems to actually feel quite strongly about this, and I think that he actually believes what he's saying right now.
Pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like.
So now we're seeing both hands come out. You know, when he's talking about rallies, he seems to feel a lot about this. You're going to see both hands coming out. He's emphasizing this a lot.
As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
So watch his shoulders right here.
Used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe.
So he's using both shoulders as he talks. Oftentimes when people are lying or being deceptive, they tend to use one shoulder. So I really do think that Donald Trump believes exactly what he's saying right here.
That's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
All right, let's go ahead and stop here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language you observed during the debate. Now, it's interesting. They both have very different styles. Kamala Harris wants to talk directly to the people listening at home. She would oftentimes look directly at the camera, almost as though she's looking at the people listening. Whereas Donald Trump talks to the moderators. He looks directly at them, addresses them directly, talks about things that he disagrees with them about. He's much more likely to talk to somebody that's sitting right in front of him and react that way rather than talk directly to people at home. So it's a very different approach. Not right, wrong, or otherwise. They're just very different. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of what you observed today. If you have other aspects of this debate that you want me to specifically take a look at, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do another video. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.